Hardball's Chris Matthews will be MSNBC's election anchor tomorrow. Chris, good morning to you.
Meredith.
You know, over the weekend, a Republican pollster said that this is the worst political environment for Republicans since Watergate. Yet it looks like there's some movement going on. So where do you think we stand? Why are you smiling?
Well, because I think it's going to be a wipeout. I think
You
the
do?
Democrats are going to carry the House by 20, some high 20s, and I think the Senate seats are perhaps not 6 but 5. And I can see a big victory for the Democrats. There is some nervousness. I think the president was very smart to say they're dancing in the end zone before the touchdown.
But that's always dangerous to do.
It is dangerous because people don't like either party. And the minute they see one winning, they go, I'm going to vote for the other guy. So in a way, the advance warning that the Democrats are winning big has scared a few people back to the Republican Party. But I think this election, as David Gregory said in that report, and as Matt reported earlier, is about Iraq. And I think when you go in that voting booth, all the little things will fade, and you'll be in Iraq when you get in that voting booth. You're going to feel it.
And
it's
what
about Iraq.
the Saddam factor then?
Well, I think that's one win. I think in baseball terms they went 1 for 5. They said to be WMD. They said there was going to be a link to 9/11. It was going to be a cakewalk. They're going to greet us as liberators. Okay, they got one right. They nailed the bad guy, and that's, I think, a bipartisan feeling. I think that helps. It would have been bad, or it would have been worse, obviously, if the trial had been a disaster and he hadn't been convicted.
But not enough, you think, to really give the Republicans a big push?
It's the 6th year of a presidency. It's a war that's become increasingly unpopular, and a president is probably the least popular president we've had since Nixon. And so it's a difficult time for them. I think the Democrats have not been brilliant, but they have been there. At least they exist as an alternative, and I think the people want an alternative. I think it's one of those elections where there's only two answers, yes or no. If you go in the voting booth and you say yes to the Republican Party, the whole world press, everywhere in the world, are going to report Wednesday morning, Bush does okay in the election. If the people vote no, the world press will say Bush's Iraq policy is rejected. And by the way, the president will read it that way. If you vote Republican Tuesday, the president will say thank you for supporting my war policy. It's about Iraq, 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 and there's no real other big issue.
Let's talk about the toss-up races for the Senate. Rhode Island, Missouri, Tennessee, Virginia, Montana. Of those, which one do you think is the bellwether state?
I think the one in Missouri. I think Missouri is so much. If you look at the polling, by the way, the president's not unpopular everywhere. In Utah, in Idaho, in Montana, they like him. He's about 50-some%. You move across the country over towards the east, when you get to Missouri,
well, it's so close to Missouri. We got the numbers
and that's
right
where
up.
the president's about 40%. He's not really that bad off. I think McCaskill has to win this. And there is an exception to the Iraq rule. I think stem cell and the Michael J. Fox commercial is probably the deciding factor in that state. It's so unique that way because the war isn't terrifically hated there. The president's not terrifically hated, so they have to decide on this secondary issue. But the people who have diseases in their family or fear diseases, the big ones, stem cells are a big issue.
You know, let's go back to Iraq for a minute because that does seem to be the key issue overall. Do you think people believe that if the Democrats take over Congress that there somehow will be a major shift in policy in Iraq?
And they think so because that's what they have to believe, because if they vote Republican, they know they're going to get a continuation. I think the most deadly thing the president said was at that press conference 2 weeks ago, when I think it was Jim Rutenberg of the New York Times said, will we be building permanent bases in Iraq? In other words, never leaving, always being an occupying power as long as we live forever, and he wouldn't rule it out. I think when he said we may stay there forever, the people will say, wait a minute, we have to have a choice here.
And finally, unemployment rate lowest in 5 years. Will that help?
It's fabulous. The market's up around 13,000.
But that's got to help the Republicans.
You would think so, but we're at war. And as I said, I think when you go in that voting booth, you're going to find Iraq there.
All right, so they'll take the House, according to Chris Matthews, the Democrats, and 1 short of the Senate.
I can't predict things, but based upon conventional wisdom, I think that's where it's headed. About 5 pickups in the Senate and about 27 in the House.
Chris Matthews, thank you so much.
You.
I'll hold you to that. And by the way,
it's not a prediction.
Chris and the entire MSNBC team will be covering the midterm elections all day today on cable. And tomorrow night, you can get all the election results from Brian Williams, Tim Russert, Tom Brokaw, and the whole NBC political team at 10, 9 Central Time, right here on NBC. And of course, we'll have a complete election wrap-up Wednesday morning on Today.